Buongiorno and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Arlene and I am an American woman who lives here in Rome, Italy. I've been living here since 2008 and I am doing a series all about moving to Italy. So let's get into it. Last video and the first video in this series was all about why. What is your why? Why do you want to live in Italy? And today we're going to talk about where. Where do you want to live in Italy? So first of all, budget. That's key. What are you willing to spend? What would you like to spend? That will determine a lot where you're going to live. Of course, the South is cheaper than the North, but keep in mind the salaries are lower in the South than the North. If your why is that, let's say, for example, you are retired and you're moving to Italy because you want to have a slower pace of life, better quality of life. So you're not looking for a job, you don't need to work. So therefore you have more options. You don't need to live in a city so that you can have options for work and a better opportunity to find a job. But keep in mind, okay, you can live in the countryside, you can live in the seaside, you can live mountainside, but how is your health? What is the hospital like where you're interested in moving to? How is the transportation? Do you need to live near a major international airport, or is a regional airport okay for you because you don't plan to be flying back and forth to the States that often, or let's say to Canada? But let's say you're not retired. Let's say you're moving to Italy for another reason, and you want to keep working and you need to keep working. So have you checked to see what the job market is like in the area that you're interested in? If you're thinking about, okay, it's more important for you to be in Italy and you are willing to change jobs or take a pay cut, again, do your research. What skill set do you have that would make sense in Italy? And I think sometimes this is where some of our fellow Americans get tripped up because they are so focused on the logistics of getting here and the romantic part of living in Italy that they're not thinking about the practical part of living here. For example, someone emailed me and said, oh, I really want to move to Rome or Florence, but those are my two favorite places in Italy. And when she told me what she did for a living, I said to her, well, wow, you should think about Milan, because not only is it the economic, powerhouse of Italy, there are a lot of industries there where you could possibly find work because she's freelance in a creative field. I said, there's fashion, there's tech, there's advertising, and a lot of the big American multinationals have their Italian offices based in Milan, like your Googles, etc., etc. And she wrote me back and said, thank you, but I do not want to live in Milan. I'm not interested in living in Milan because Milan is ugly. Okay, I understand that aesthetically Milan is not the same as Rome, but I know Italians that do what this person does for a living who cannot find work in Rome because there's hardly any work here for that particular field. So you're going to come here. I don't know if she speaks Italian, but maybe she speaks Italian fluently, but she doesn't know anyone here. So how would she get a job in a field that's extremely competitive? And okay, so there's that. I think, like I said, I get it. The dream. I'm not here to discourage anybody. And people are like, oh, the whole la dolce vita. But you know what's not la dolce vita? Not being able to pay your bills, not being able to afford an apartment. Like, I'm sorry, you cannot move to Italy just based on vibes. You have to have a plan. You have to have an idea of what you're going to do when you actually get here and give yourself the best opportunity to be successful here. So yes, where you live in this country makes a difference. Yes, Italy is small compared to the United States. It's the size of like maybe Arizona, right? So, but it is very different. Each region has its own flavor. Each region has its pros and cons. So you have to do a little bit of research. And again, don't assume because you spent vacation in this place that this would be the best place for you to actually live. Because as we said before, being on vacation somewhere and living somewhere are two very different things. So in that vein, talking about what is best for you, where do you feel more comfortable, I'm going to talk a little bit about race because it comes up all the time with me. People ask me this question a lot. And recently there was yet another TikTok that went viral. It was a Black American talking about how Italy was super racist. It's the most racist country. She would never come back again. You could not pay her to come here. And of course, people keep sending me this video. They're like, what do you think? Da, da, da. And there is a group, and I'll put this in below. I'll put the link below. There is a private Facebook group on for Black Americans who are interested. Well, I don't know if you have to be American, but anyway, it's called Black Expats in Italy. And it's a great resource. And someone did, ask the question because they saw this video, like, well, how is it? Because I'm thinking about moving. So here's the thing. I have said before, I would not move to a foreign country unless I had spent time there. So if you have been to Italy and you enjoyed it, you liked how you felt when you were here, okay, it works for you. I think we cannot discount that person's experience because sometimes people are like, get super defensive and they're like, well, she didn't stay in the right place or she didn't da da da. Like, it's okay. Let her have that. That was her experience. You cannot say she's wrong for feeling the way she does. On the flip side, you cannot discount the thousands of people who live here and are thriving and are happy. And if we didn't love being here, we would leave. So I think that that's really important to be aware and to learn a little bit about the culture before you even come here. And also and this is specific for Americans, because I think if you're coming from Canada or the Caribbean, it's different. So a lot of, especially if you're around my age, if you're Gen X, so I grew up in an era of Howard Beach and Yusuf Hawkins. So I think sometimes there is this perception because, and I'm not saying all, but there are some Italian American communities in the States that are extremely racist. So if this is what you think, well, why would I go to their motherland? What, to have racism squared? Why would I do that? So I think there's some of that going on with Gen X and older millennials. With the younger people, I'm not really sure. But I would say, keep in mind that this is Italy. Italian Americans and Italians are not the same. Are there prejudiced people here? Of course. Are there racist people? Of course. Are there people who are small-minded and have not really traveled a lot or maybe have not met people from different backgrounds? Of course. We find that in the States as well. However, do I feel that Italy is more racist than the United States? Do I feel like it is a state institutionalized thing? No, I do not feel that. And also I'm older, and so I know that, I just know that coming here for me was, how do I explain it? It was almost like it's easier for me to breathe here. And I know it's partly because I'm American. I did not grow up here, and my expectations on this country are probably not as, I expect more from the United States because we do believe our own mythology more so than other countries. A lot of Americans really do believe that America is the greatest country in the world, that America is number one. So, and America is exceptional. So if you're exceptional, I'm going to expect at least the bare minimum. And when you can't even do that, that's, yeah, that's tough. And, I'm a dual citizen. My other passport is French. But I didn't, grow up in France. I did not grow up in the Caribbean. I grew up in the States. So when someone said to me, well, why would you move to Italy when you could have moved to France? I remember this passage, and I'm paraphrasing because it was so beautifully written from the book The Namesake. And there was a character in this book who, like me, was first generation American, but her parents were Indian. And she loved all things Paris. Like, she was like a big Francophile. And people said to her, well, why don't you move back to India? Or why don't you stay in the States? What's this fascination with France? And she said, it's because, instead of picking the two countries that I technically am, a citizen of, I chose this other country, and it's a proactive choice, and my expectations of this place, it's different. And I really felt that. And so I'm going to try to find that passage and write it down because it is really beautiful. So all this to say, I think it's important before you move here to spend time here and see how you feel when you're here. And this also ties back to where you are in life. If you're retired, if you need to work, yes, if you need to work. I know people who work in fashion in Milan, and they've told me these stories that are just outrageous, not recent, but from like the late 90s and early aughts, that were just like, you've got to be kidding. And then here's the thing, like a lot of times people say, well, Italy is like Japan in that it's more of a monoculture. Like, we are 12% of the population in the States, like 12, 13%. And here, I think it's less than 2%. But if you're an international company and you're selling your goods throughout the world, then you can't use the excuse like, oh, I didn't know, because no, it's global. You can't use that excuse. And another thing to keep in mind, that when you are a Black American and you move out of the United States, it doesn't matter where you go. You can go to the Caribbean, you can go to Ghana, you can go to Nigeria, countries that have a majority Black population, but it's about your nationality. So here in Italy, the majority of Black people who live in Italy obviously are not American. And some of us, unfortunately, can be as ethnocentric as white Americans and kind of do that whole expat thing where they are just, they only surround themselves with expats. They have no interest in meeting people or getting to know people who are Italian and were born and raised here. And sometimes when things do kick off here, their heads are in the sand because they're just like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Because they don't know any Black Italians. They just don't and are not interested. So, and again, it depends where you live. Like, obviously, like cities like Milan and Rome, there are more. But even in small towns, like I have friends who grew up in La Marche, like their parents were from Nigeria and they were born and raised in Italy. And so I just don't want anyone to feel discouraged because somebody on TikTok said it's terrible, when that was not their experience. If you did come here and it wasn't for you, obviously you would not be watching this video or interested in moving. But there's something here that it draws people and has for centuries. And while I think the Paris connection is, better known, with your James Baldwin and Nina Simone and Richard Wright and Josephine Baker. Yeah, I've met, one of the first people I met when I moved to Rome, and she lived in my neighborhood, was a Black American who moved here in the 60s. And when she told me why she moved here, she said because I guess she studied abroad here, and then she stayed because you have to think about what was going on in America in the early to mid 60s. So again, I think everyone's experience is unique, and everyone is bringing their own perception and perspective and of what it is like to move through the world as a Black person. And I just think it is really important to not discount someone else's experience because it's not your experience. Because I did see a bunch of people kind of ganging up on that woman who was saying Italy was awful, and just, that's what's her experience, and she's talking about it, and and that's okay. Like, you don't have, it's okay. I mean, not even Italians are repping Italy as hard as some of those other folks were. The other thing I want to talk about is, and this seems like common sense, but if you're coming from a small town, let's say in upstate New York, or you're coming from like Ames, Iowa, maybe moving to Rome or Milan, Palermo, Napoli may not be a good fit for you. And vice versa. If you are from a big city in the States, moving to a small town in the middle of nowhere might seem like, oh, ideal and picturesque, but be real with yourself. Are you going to be happy there? I remember being at an aperitivo here, and this woman had recently moved to Rome with her Italian husband. The company, or I think he was in the military, transferred them here. And she was they were in Calabria before, and she was just complaining about where they were before. It was so small, and it was like this and the other. And so I thought, okay, wow, now you're in Rome, so you must be so happy to be here. And she said that while, yes, she could find ranch dressing in Rome, she's like, not enough things are open 24 hours. I mean, we do have like a supermarket or two that is open 24 hours, but it just made me, I don't know, it just made me chuckle. Like, you're in Rome. Okay, so the place you were before was too small, too boring, and now you're in central Italy. You're in Rome, where it's probably easier to get to other places. It's a major city. There are like so many things to do here, and she's like wasn't feeling it. So I think she's just, because she moved here because of this man that she met. So it wasn't like she was somebody who was like, I love Italy. So I wonder what's going on with those two. I stopped belonging to that organization, which I will talk about that in some other video because it was a trip. So let's see, we talked about location. We talked about work. We talked about where you are in life. I had mentioned about healthcare, the hospitals, things like that. So keep in mind, like I said before, every region has its pros and cons. So do some research about what those pros and cons are. Because, for example, if you are somebody who is super organized and you like things done a certain way, maybe you don't want to be in a region that is known for being more disorganized and laid back. Like, it might drive you nuts. So that's, again, think about that. Are you coming a family? How are the schools? Are you going to what are the ages of your children? Are you going to put them in the local Italian school? Are you going to go with like an international school? And again, like, there's so many Americans here who are on social media who talk about all these things, like living here with children. And so I think that's, again, really important thing to think about if you're coming as a family. Let's see. I think that pretty much covers it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. And if you have any questions, please leave them below in the comments. And if you are thinking about moving to Italy, where would you love to live? Like, what's on your wish list and why? And if you do live in Italy, why did you pick the place where you live now? So, ciao for now. Ciao.